Hi, I thought I'd make a quick video of replacing my bottom crank on my Specialized Sirrus Carbon Comp bike. Now the reason I'm doing this is it started to make a bit of a knocking noise, and I've had a few problems with the bottom bracket on this bike, and I've had the BB30 bearings changed a couple of times, and that's sort of improved things for a bit, and it got bad again. So what I ended up doing was I realised that there was something a little bit wrong when I got hold of the crank arm in the bike, and I found that I could sort of wobble it like this actually while it was in the bike frame. So I thought, that's not good. So I took it out to find that the actual shaft is quite badly worn on the actual crank. Now, I don't know whether you can see that particularly. If I try and do it against a background, you can see there is a line down the crank there, which, is, let's get it from this angle, is obviously been worn where the bearing sits. So you might be able to see that at the bottom edge, if it focuses on it, there's quite an indented ridge there. That's not the way around. Towards that top edge, it's fine. But that bottom edge, it's really bad. So basically, my FSA Gossamer crank, I think it's basically worn out. No, a bit disappointed, but then again, I've probably done about 9,000 miles on this bike so far, so this is the first of the major bit that's worn, apart from a few bearings every now and again. So I don't think that's too bad actually, so I need to replace it. Now, I'd actually quite fancy getting a Tiagra crank to match the rest of my Tiagra drivetrain. So that's what I bought, but obviously that comes with a Shimano, I think it's a 24mm axle, and the BB30 is obviously a 30. So I need to do a bit of conversion. So I'm actually going to use a Praxis Works bottom bracket converter. So I just grab that out of the pack, like this. So this will fit into the BB30 and provide me with a 24mm axle, outbound bearings, and hopefully a little less creak every now and again. And it should fit, or my Shimano crank should fit beautifully into this. Now this is a slightly different version of, a slightly newer version I think it is, of the Praxis Works bracket. Previously, the previous version had a split collet around this bit, top, which as you screwed the top piece in, it sort of expanded the metal collet around here, and that clamped into the frame, or provided a really tight fit in the frame. This version they've actually seemed to have done away with that, and it's now a solid collet. But what they've done is they've put this orange basically rubber seal in here, and then there's a black compression black compression washer against the top of that. So now what happens is when you press it in, it is a friction fit on the bottom end, on that end, which I think is the, if I remember right, that's the non-drive end. I'll have to check on that one. I can't remember now. And then when you tighten the other end, basically the black washer squeezes the orange one, which expands and gives you a really tight fit. I don't know why they changed it. They previously claimed that the expanding collet was a really neat thing, better than other people's. I don't know, perhaps they found that this is actually a better solution again, but we will see. So I'm going to put that in. So I've already disassembled this, but if you're interested, my FSA bracket uses a retained sort of threaded bolt in there. So this is the non-drive side. So you need a 10mm Allen into there. You don't take the silver cap off here. You need a 10mm Allen. You hold this firm, and then you undo the Allen nut inside there. and basically it'll actually pull itself off the spline shaft, off this end. Okay. Then obviously that will be stuck through the bike, so you need to give it a bit of a tap on the end, nice rubber mallet, and you should then gradually pop the thing out of the actual frame. Now with mine, it came out and left the BB30 on the drive side, so the BB30 on the drive side just came out of the actual seat on the actual crankshaft, and the other BB30 on the non-drive side I had to tap out. Now I didn't actually have a bearing remover tool, so instead I actually made do with a parallel punch. Now what I did was I put that in from the other side, put it as close to the edge of the actual BB30 as I could. Though be careful, on the inside edge of here you will have a circlip, so obviously don't hit the circlip, so you need to be just above the circlip, and you tap it. Now tap it gently, and what you want to do is you want to go sort of top bottom and left right, and then perhaps top bottom again, left right, perhaps on the diagonals, but sort of go opposite either way and opposite the other way, and gradually tap it out. And you don't have to use a great deal of force, I didn't find, but you want to do it gradually. You don't want to heft one side out, because it'll basically twist and it'll get stuck and it'll be a right pain, and you could do the actual inside of the seat some damage. So that's how I got that out. Now then I had to remove the circlips. Now there was a couple of circlips in here, two different styles. I don't know why there were two different styles on mine. There's more traditional circlip, which is that one, against the background. So you've got the two little pinholes. Now these are internal circlips, so you basically need a pair of internal circlip pliers. So as you you open them out, you put them in the pins, and then as you squeeze them, they will pinch the circlip together, make the diameter smaller, and then you should be able to ease it out. A lot easier than doing it the other way. Now the other side, if I can get this one free, it's got jammed on the other one, hold on a moment. The other side had this one in it. Now, to start with I thought, oh, okay, this one actually is a normal circlip, but the pins are broken off it. But I've compared it against the other one, and it doesn't look like that is the case actually. It actually looks like a different type of circlip. So for this one, what I had to do was I got a couple of small screwdrivers, flat blade screwdrivers, got in under this slightly chamfered end and sort of eased it up a bit, and then managed to get another screwdriver between the inside of the bearing seat and the circlip now being pulled away, and then gradually sort of worked my way around a bit, moving it a little bit further along, and just easing it out, trying not to do any damage to the seat, and sort of easing it forward out the frame. I would suggest you possibly wear a pair of goggles for this, because when these things ping out, they do ping out at quite a pace. It's quite a bit of force on them, and you don't want that in your eye. So I managed to get that one out relatively easily. A bit more work than the one with the circlip pliers, which was very easy. So what I've been doing up to now is I've just been cleaning out the seat in here, which doesn't look too bad. There's a little bit of possibly a little bit of scoring on there, just obviously where the bearing has sat, but that should be right. Let's go a bit so the cam to focus on that. But it should be okay. Now one thing I do warn you with the Praxis Works bottom bracket converter is that you haven't got anything protruding in the bottom of your frame, like the cable clamps and like that. Now you can see in there is a cable nut or cable bolt, or cable nut I think it is, but if you go down, it's not actually protruding into the space, so that one will be okay on this one. So on this frame, and this is the SL4 frame on this particular Sirrus, so it should be the same for any other SL4 frame, hopefully anyway. So my next job is to Actually, I might give the bike a bit of a wash first before I do this, before I put it, to get everything back together. So our next job then is to start putting the Praxis Works bottom bracket in, and then fit the Shimano crank. So I'll be back in a bit. Okay, I've given the frame a nice clean. Got all the old glue and Loctite and all debris, dirt, grease out of the actual bearing seat there. Ready to put the Praxis Works bearing in. Now what I told you to do is to apply a thin, so this is the non-drive side cup, you apply a thin layer of copper slip or anti-seize on that surface here, and also on the end surface up there. Now there is a rubber washer up this end that you need to put on, make sure it's on there. That, they claim, is to just accommodate any variances in frame thickness. When you press this into the actual frame, they say you must just kiss that against the outside of the frame and not squash it. So obviously I'm going to try and do that. So I'm going to put this in now and press it in, which you'll need a bearing press or some other means to gently squeeze that in to the actual frame, and then we'll see about tightening up the other side. Okay, that's the non-drive side cup pressed into the frame, and as you can see we have just kissed the rubber grommet up to it, so it all should be nicely in. So that's that side. If we take a look around the other side, you can just see the inner edge has come into the seat on this side. So when you're pressing this in, you just want to, as you initially sort of press it in your hand, you want to check around this side just to make sure it's sort of heading in the right direction and not pressing up against the back of this side's the drive side cup or drive side seat, just so it goes in as you're actually doing the pressing. So that's now in. So now to prepare the drive side cup, which again needs a little bit of anti-seize on the threads and also a little bit of grease on where the soft rubber seal goes and the rigid rubber seal goes. But I'll show you that in a moment. Okay, this is the drive side cup. The instructions say put a thin coating of grease just below the threads, and then put some anti-seize copper slip on the actual threads themselves, and then you basically put the two washers on. So the first one, oh, dropped it, all good. First one is the rigid black one that goes on first. That's going to act as a compressing washer, so we push it all the way down, and then we're going to put the flexible rubber one on next, and that is going to expand and grip on the drive side. Now, like I say, they say put grease on as opposed to copper slip. Not quite sure why, or whether you could actually use the copper slip for both, because obviously copper slip is grease based, but obviously has copper in for the anti-seize properties. I actually just used some lithium grease, just because I have some for doing other things, so that's what I used. The instructions also then say put some grease over the actual rubbers, the actual two washers there, before you start mating it. So I shall do that, and then I will offer it up. Okay, there's the drive side all greased up. Now, the instructions say you obviously screw this in. You can do it first by hand, and then obviously as it starts to tighten, you need a proper tool. So I've got a couple of those. Let's just show you those. I actually bought an IC tools, ice tools, Hollowtech II, or Hollowtech II, sorry, and that fits over there. And this particular one, it takes, you can put an 8mm Allen socket in there to actually do the tightening, and I've got two of those because also we need to keep the non-drive side stationary and then tighten up on the drive side, which is actually going to thread in. Now it does say in the instructions that you need to thread this in and tighten it until it reaches a stop, and there's a machine stop on the actual sleeve itself. Now just so you know how far to do this then, and how much further you need to tighten it, what I suggest you do is that before you actually mate this up, and actually when you've got the non-drive side cut before you actually assemble it in there, take the two washers off this side, mate the two together, and just as the threads start to bite, count how many times you need to rotate it, and you can use the sort of the symbols on here, the writing on here, just a counting mark, and count how many times you have to rotate it before it actually meets the stop, but obviously without the rubbers or the seals in there to actually cause the stop. Now for this one, it was about 5 3/4 turns, so I'm going to try and do that. So slide that in there. I'm just going to do it the wrong way to start with, just so I can find where I think it's there, and she catches. No. Okay, it might just catch just there. So that's caught just there. So I'm going to now rotate this 5 3/4 full turns, or at least as many as I can by hand, and then finish it off with actually the Hollowtech II tools. I'll show that in a bit. Okay, that's the bearing all the way home. It seems to be tight up against the frame on this side. It tightened by the number of turns that I sort of expected to be. So I think we started here. I think I managed to get about 5 turns by hand, then another sort of half turn, and just the 3/4. So that seems to be seated, and that seems to be nice and solid now. I can't tighten that anymore. That seems to be right. Seems to be pretty tight in there. Probably not much to see through there, but just the sleeve. So, well, now it's a case of, you see that's nicely tight up against the frame there. Now it's a case of put my new Hollowtech II bottom bracket in. Now they do say you want to put a bit of grease under the actual seals. They actually come pretty greased up actually. In fact, the whole thing comes even greased up with the copper slip in the various places. But yeah, depending on how much you rub off as you're sort of taking it apart and put it back together to actually do the assembly, you might just have to add a bit more. That seems to be okay in there, so I might just leave that as it is. But yeah, at some point I will probably pop a bit more in and probably put some lithium grease or another suitable grease in that. So yeah, so now time to fit my new Tiagra Hollowtech II crank. There's my new Tiagra crank, which I think looks really nice actually, because it looks like the old Tiagra and the Dura Ace to some extent. I've just used a bit of the grease it came with, just to grease on the shaft, so it'll slip in easily, and I will now install that. And I'll show you how I get on when I come to the other side. So there's the drive side crank in. Actually slipped in a bit easier than I thought it would, but not easy enough to do one-handed, so I can actually show you doing it. So now, all the way through. Just me put the non-dry side crank arm on and tighten it up and put a little cap in, and then I can put my clipless pedals back on. So again, I probably need both hands for this, so I'll just pause a bit and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay, that's the non-dry side crank arm on. Obviously make sure that when you put this on, the two are opposite each other, in opposite directions, otherwise that would make for some interesting pedalling and probably not a great deal of progress. So at the moment this is just pushed on. I haven't done the bolts up yet. What you should do then is put the cap on to preload the actual bearings. So this is a plastic cap, and if we just thread that in there, now the ice tools I had to actually do the bottom bracket also has the cap tightening sort of a socket in it. So this is just going to get a better view of this. This is just going to sort of preload the bearings, just tighten the two crank arms together just to make sure they are sort of tight before we actually do this. I might just need to get both hands on this. It only needs to be done just hand tight, and then we can start tightening the two nuts there. Now, do note the Shimano documentation that says when you tighten these two nuts, it's a 5mm Allen key, but do them alternately and with a small amount each time. So perhaps a quarter of a turn, and sort of alternate like that, just so you're pinching it up evenly. And really that, I think on this one it says between 12 and 14 Newton meters, I think was the torque setting. So it's not particularly tight, not vastly, really, you know, you're not going to hang off the end of the Allen key to get this tight. But obviously you need to keep it reasonably tight there. So if you've got a torque wrench to actually do that, that would be great. If not, yeah, sort of go by feel, and then just check it again in, you know, a few hours riding's time, just to make sure things haven't loosened or worked loose like that. So I shall tighten this up, and I shall tighten those bolts up, and I shall just show you the final thing. Alright, it's all fitted, all tightened up, and all looks pretty nice. Might need to adjust the front derailleur just a little bit. It's slightly rubbing on the outermost crank, but that's just a fairly simple job of just tweaking the screws, and yeah, there we go. Wasn't too difficult. Now, no more BB30, no more very worn FSA crank, hopefully no more clonking as it as a pedal due to the flat spot on it, and come on camera, yeah, good job, I think the crank looks really nice. So hope you've enjoyed it, hope it's proved helpful to someone else, and thank you.